At our wedding, my husband proudly announced, "I'm going to make my wife manage groceries with only $50 a month." I was shocked. The happy, joyful atmosphere suddenly went silent. Then he added, "I'm so lucky to have found myself a cheap housemaid." At that moment, it hit me. He didn't see me as a partner, but as someone to boss around. I felt my heart sink. Suddenly, my dad's firm voice echoed through the room. "Is that all you wanted to say, you jerk?" He stood up, glaring at my husband. But my husband just smirked and said, "Don't get cocky, old man," clearly looking down on him, unaware of what was coming next. My name is Sarah. I met my husband Jack in college. We were in the same year. After graduation, we lost touch, but at 24, he organized a reunion. That night, I drank a bit too much and felt sick, and Jack took care of me, asking our friends not to push me to drink. I was touched. He seemed so considerate, different from his wild college days, and treated me like I was something precious. Jack confessed he'd liked me since college and even threw the reunion just to see me again. We started dating, and after a few months, I moved in with him. At 25, he proposed and we got married. I later learned Jack was the heir to a big company, though he never bragged about it. People often told me I was lucky to be with him. His parents seemed warm and welcoming when we told them about the marriage, and my parents were also happy with my choice. My father, who owns a small business he started when he was young, went through many hardships himself. He was probably relieved that I wouldn't have to struggle financially with Jack. After our engagement, planning a wedding was exciting. We chose a venue, picked out my wedding dress, and made all sorts of arrangements together. Then, a few months before the wedding, Jack surprised me at dinner. "Sarah, your cooking is always amazing. I think you'd do great as a full-time housewife," he said. I was stunned. I had planned to keep working after we got married, and he had never mentioned wanting me to quit. "Wait, but I wanted to keep working full-time," I replied. He said, "It's okay if you work part-time to earn some pocket money, but I'd like you to focus on the house and later on, the kids. I'll handle the finances." I explained that my job was important to me and I wanted to continue working full-time, but Jack cheerfully said, "I'll take care of the income. You don't have to worry about money." He seemed proud of the idea of being the only provider. I tried to explain that even if we had kids, I wanted to keep working. I didn't want all the responsibility to fall on him. My persistence seemed to annoy Jack, and he frowned. "I'll still handle the house and raise the kids," I promised, hoping he'd understand. With a smile, Jack finally agreed, saying, "All right, if that's what you want. They say women can feel uneasy if they lose touch with society. So go ahead and do your best with the house and kids." I felt relieved he agreed, but his comment about doing my best with housework and childcare didn't sit right. When I shared this with my friends, they reassured me, saying, "Jack cares about you, Sarah. He's a good husband." Their words comforted me and eased my worries a bit. In the months leading up to our wedding, Jack and I sometimes talked about our future. "Sarah, you're such a strong, independent woman who wants to keep working even after marriage. I'm so lucky to have you as my wife," he would say, and his kind words made me happy. "I'll help out with some of the housework too," he promised. "I'll also handle the household finances and give you a monthly allowance for expenses." I was touched by his offer. I'd always assumed managing finances would be my job, and it was a relief to know I wouldn't have to do everything myself. Finally, our wedding day arrived. Surrounded by friends and family, the ceremony was beautiful and I felt filled with joy. But then, at the end of the ceremony, everything changed. During his speech, Jack suddenly said, "I'm going to make my wife manage on just $50 for groceries each month." I froze, completely shocked. The guests began murmuring and the joyful atmosphere turned tense. Jack, grinning, added, "I'm lucky to have such a cheap maid as my wife," as if this was a joke. But I was horrified. What was he even talking about? I couldn't believe it. "You agreed I'd handle the finances, didn't you?" he said when I asked him to explain. "Well, yes, but I didn't agree to this," I stammered, realizing he might have been hiding his true intentions all along. Sarah wanted to handle all the housework and childcare. Even while working full-time, he continued, "I'm sure she'll manage to make filling, nutritious meals for $50 a month." I quickly covered the microphone. "You can't just decide this on your own." "I don't agree," I whispered angrily.
Jack's face darkened, and he leaned close, whispering, "We're bound by this ceremony now. It's too late to cancel the marriage. We've already submitted our marriage certificate. Do you really want a divorce? Jack sneered. I felt trapped. Are you threatening me? I asked, anger and disbelief boiling up inside. On what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, I was arguing with the man I just promised my future to. My face flushed with frustration, tears staining my eyes. Is this really what I signed up for? Am I going to be treated like a servant by this man? At that moment, someone stood up and marched over me. Father, Robert. His face was stern, his eyes blazing with anger. Is that all you wanted to say? You jerk! How dare you treat someone's daughter like this in front of her family? He continued, his voice cold and strong. The entire room fell silent, guests watching in shock as my father confronted Jack. Don't get cocky, old man, Jack sneered, giving my father a look I'd never seen before. A chill ran down my spine. Jack seemed to think he was above everyone, saying, I'm the president's son and the successor of a major corporation. Some small business owner has no right to lecture me. Yet, when I'd introduced my father to Jack, he praised him as a great man, telling me my father's small business didn't change his feelings for me. Now I saw that Jack's sweet words had just been an act. Suddenly, there was a loud crash. Jack's father, who had been watching in horror, had dropped his glass, his face had turned pale, and his hand shook. Jack, stop it right now, his father cried out, clearly panicked. Don't you understand? What's the big deal? We could crush a little company like his with no trouble. Jack scoffed. His father looked even more alarmed. That man, he said, nodding toward my father, is one of our major shareholders. Jack frowned, his eyes wide as he looked back and forth between his father and mine, finally understanding that my father wasn't just some small business owner. He had built his company from scratch and earned significant wealth, including stock dividends and executive pay. My father wasn't just a small business owner, held stocks in many other companies, and if he sold them, he'd have assets worth several $100 million. Among those stocks were shares in the company owned by Jack's father, giving my father enough influence to impact their company's decisions. Jack was shocked. Did you tell me today Sarah just to get her father's money? It's more than that, Jack's father admitted. He had bigger plans but never explained them to Jack, who was too arrogant to see it. Jack's father wanted access to my father's valuable patents. Currently, he was paying a lot to use them, but if Jack and I married, he'd get to use them for free. Wait, patents? And you told Jack to date me? I asked, horrified. Jack sneered. Please, I'm the son of a CEO. If it weren't for my dad's request, I wouldn't even look at you. I was supposed to be with a stunning heiress. You should be grateful. In a rage, Jack knocked over a flower vase, scattering petals everywhere. Jack, stop talking, his father muttered, his face pale and his body shaking as he realized his son was making things worse with every word. Shut up. This is all your fault, Dad, Jack snapped, turning on his father. Just then, my father's voice rang out, commanding attention. Enough. The room went silent. My father turned to me. Sarah, do you still want to marry a man like this? I shook my head quietly. I can't be happy with someone who would treat me like a servant, expecting me to live on $50 for food each month. That's financial abuse. Jack, I'm filing for annulment and would take legal action. What? You're really okay with being a divorcee? Jack taunted. Yes, and you'll be one too, I replied firmly. I'd rather that than stay with someone who sees me as a burden. My father nodded. That's probably the best choice. As for your father's company, we'll take appropriate steps. I wonder what will happen to it now. My father's stern tone finally shook Jack. He dropped to his knees, pleading, while his father stammered, Please, don't cancel the marriage. We promised to discipline him and make this right. But I had made up my mind. Jack tried to apologize, pleading, Sarah, I was wrong. Please forgive me. You can't handle housework, childcare, and work however you want. I won't limit the food budget anymore. You can even hire a maid and take it easy if you like. I calmly replied, You can't share all of that with the court. Then, turning to my father, I said, Let's go home. We apologized to the guests, returned their gifts, and officially canceled the wedding. Afterward, with the help of my father's skilled lawyer, we sued Jack. The court ruled that the broken engagement was Jack's fault. He was ordered to cover all the wedding expenses, and I received additional compensation. Jack's actions to secure a convenient marriage failed miserably, and he humiliated his father by making him beg on his knees. As a result, his parents cut ties with him, ending his chances of ever taking over his father's company. In desperation, Jack caused chaos at work and got into trouble with the police. Eventually, he was fired. Now, he drifts through life without a stable job or any hope of securing a marriage with a wealthy heiress. As for me, though I ended up as a divorcee, my father introduced me to a kind young man who works at his company. We're currently dating and plan to marry next year.